Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Counterfactual Gaming, the gaming channel where if there's something historical in a video game, we don't do it. And today I'm flying a whole bunch of British and Italian aircraft over Benelux just so I can have a chance to test the changes Paradox has implemented in the new beta patch. Now, if you didn't know, on Tuesday, Paradox posted an open beta for patch 1.13.6, and there's just a couple of changes in it that affect gameplay, fixing some crashes to the desktop, some UI improvements, removing Germany's starting trade from Sweden, which I'm very happy they're getting rid of. But for those of us interested in Hearts of Iron gameplay, there are two changes that should get your immediate attention. Change 1, airframe weight curve has been changed, which boils down to some small airframes now weigh less than they do in the release version of the game. And they've increased the attack values of light machine guns and heavy machine guns. This calls into question everything we've been thinking about for aircraft over the past couple of months since the release of Arms Against Tyranny. Now, I'm not going to do a full set of in-depth tests on aircraft right now because it is just an open beta, which you can download through your Steam launcher if you have the game through Steam. You just got to click to properties and click on betas and click the open beta. But I have done a sort of initial analysis of how these changes will impact the game, and I want to share some of that analysis with you. Before I get to that part, I want to just say that, one, if you like the content that you're seeing here, put a like and a sub on the video, and if you don't like the sheer number of casualties that are happening in Benelux, do let me know in the comments down below. But I also want to point out that I originally had planned to do a collaborative video with a friend of mine talking about what would be the most meta aircraft to use in the current patch of Arms Against Tyranny, which included the creation of the planes that you're seeing on screen right now. And yes, one of those is a 3-engined heavy fighter. But now that we know that they're already changing the air designer yet again, there's no point in talking about any of that stuff at this point. Back to square one, start looking at aircraft design from scratch. Now, I don't want this video to be too long, but I know some folks just want to get to the nitty-gritty. So if you just want to see what a good, solid aircraft design looks like in the current beta patch, skip to this time code. You can look at what I've come up with. Keep in mind, this is an open beta, so changes are likely to happen. That's why you probably shouldn't get tied to specific aircraft designs right now. What I'm going to be presenting you with is just some information on those changes and some suggestions on how to make use of them. To begin with, let's talk about basic weight of airframe. Right now, we're looking at the Focke-Wulf 190, which is a 1940 light airframe in the designer. And you'll notice that, like all airframes, it has a base starting weight. And this is sort of the weight tax. You can't see me doing air quotes, but I'm doing an air quote here. It's the weight tax for whatever that airframe is. Heavier airframes have a heavier starting weight. More advanced airframes tend to have heavier weight as well, even though they come with more module slots. The value in the beta is 5, but if you look at this screenshot, you can see that in the current release version of the game, the weight is 7. So that's a 2-weight difference. That is a significant weight reduction for the 1940 light airframe. For comparison, armor plates on a light airframe weigh 2. It's a significant change in weight. But they also increase the firepower of light and heavy machine guns. As you can see here, heavy machine guns, the 4X heavy machine guns, weigh 5, have an air attack of 18 in the beta patch, while in the current release version of the game, they have an air attack of 12 and a weight of 5. Note that production cost is still the same. For both, it is a production cost of 3. So it's a flat 50% improvement in firepower with no drawbacks. LMGs have been changed differently. The 4X light machine gun and the beta patch has an air attack of 10 and a weight of 2 and a production cost of 2. In the release version of the game, they only have an air attack of 8 and a weight of 3. So in the beta patch, their attack has increased by 20%, but the weight went down by a significant amount, by around 1/3. Now, I wouldn't get too excited over these changes to LMGs because one of the primary limiting factors on light airframes is module slots, not just weight. So you can have the most efficient guns in the universe, but you still only have 3 top row modules on a 1940 airframe. This means that while you might find a use for those LMGs, what I'm going to show you today is that we should still be largely relying on HMGs, not LMGs, assuming you have the tech. And since HMGs are an early tech, you should be unlocking that before you make 1940 aircraft anyway. Now, I should point out that one thing really hasn't changed in the beta patch. Those are the defense turrets, and I've got them shown on screen right now. Only the forward-facing wing-mounted machine guns have been modified. As far as I can tell, the defense turrets still have basically their same attributes. This means that some of the turrets are still pretty good, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but I don't want you to read the patch notes and think, oh, heavy machine gun turrets must shoot harder now. They really don't. They are still basically the same stats. So what do these changes mean? Well, in the release version of the game, cannons are very useful. When I'm talking about cannons, I'm talking about these cannons. Even though there is an agility reduction for them, they provide solid volumes of air attack in exchange for their weight and cost. And as you can see, they have comparable costs to heavy machine guns right now, even in the beta patch. But they weigh more and have an agility penalty. Now, I'm not talking about the large cannons. Large cannons in both the beta patch and in the release patch I consider to be largely not useful unless you want to use the tech, and I'm talking about this tech right here, to get the cannon turret tech, which you see here. There are a few edge cases where the cannon defense turret is better than a heavy machine gun defense turret. I'm not going to get into all of the differences between that right now, other than to say that I don't consider trying to grab that tech to be a super useful use of research when the HMG turret is good enough. But when we're talking about cannons, we're talking about tier 1 cannons, not the large cannons. Remember that the large cannon tech is a post-1940 tech, so even if you want to get those cannon turrets on aircraft because you think it's better than the HMGs, you're looking at a long-term research investment, not something that you would plan for in 1939, because you'd be getting the 1940 airframe and the tier 3 engine into play. So, how should we design planes now that we have this change in the game? Well, I did a bunch of fooling around to see just how decent heavy machine guns were, and I came up with a couple of designs in the light fighter category. And initially, what you're seeing on screen was what I thought would be a decent aircraft, using 2 HMGs and cannons to get to 25 weight with drop tanks and a self-sealing fuel tank. Obviously, you would ditch the self-sealing fuel tank if you wanted to save on rubber, and you would do something else there. I thought this was a pretty good plane, but actually, it's not a good plane. Let me show you what I came up with that was even better. Because of the way weight works now, and because of the firepower of the HMGs, I traded out those cannons for more HMGs, and the weight savings went into a light machine gun defense turret, which brought me to 25 weight, perfect weight for this aircraft, using up all the thrust that that tier 3 engine provides. And I tested these 2 planes over Benelux for 30 days. IC normalized tests, which means that this plane, the HMG plane, costs 34, but the heavy fighter with the cannons costs 35, so you can build more of those HMG planes than you can these basic fighters with cannons. And the results of 30 days worth of combat are pretty clear in favor of the heavy machine gun plane with a little bit of turret on it. As you can see here, the more expensive cannon plane took more losses than the HMG plane with a little bit of turret on it. And those cannon planes are also more expensive, so we don't even need fancy math to see that this is a clear win for heavy machine guns. I did also try a dual cannon setup with turrets, and that didn't work well either compared to this plane. And I tried a couple of other combinations that had like cannon turrets here and cut down on some of the stuff here. So far, and again, I've only been doing this for a few days, but so far, first impression, I can't find any use for light machine guns other than you just haven't gotten the heavy machine gun tech. And for fighter aircraft, these HMGs are the most efficient because it lets you slip on that extra turret. Why does it work like this? Well, it works like this because while you would normally want more air attack, because look, this cannon has more air attack than these heavy machine guns. And you'd think, oh, you want 2 extra air attack. But the LMG turret has 1 air attack and 1 defense at the cost of a little bit of max speed and some weight. That air defense point from the turret module counts for more than the extra air attack on those cannons. So this HMG plane that I'm showing you right here, it's got a range of 812 kilometers, so it has what I consider to be the bare minimum effective range for a light airframe aircraft. And again, this is light airframes in Europe. We're not talking about the Pacific, where you're definitely going to want heavy fighters. This plane in the beta patch will do you just fine. Now, if you're looking for a heavy fighter that has more range than 800 kilometers, this plane right here might serve your needs well. It's got 1,100 kilometers range, it's got an air attack of 76, and it has an air defense of 33. It costs twice as much as those light fighters, but it's got more range and it's got a ton of firepower. And I did some testing with this, and this plane, while more expensive, performed fairly well. However, 1,100 kilometer range isn't very good. So you could just scrap all those extra turret modules and slap on a extra fuel tank and still get to 38. That'll give you a 1,600 kilometer range plane. You slap a MEO on there, like say we'll slap on Fiat, and that'll give us a 2,300 kilometer range. Or if we want to go back to having turrets, that still gives us 1,700 kilometer range. So depending on your MEOs and what you're doing with medium airframes, you've got options here to get some longer range aircraft. I should point out that for light airframes, Supermarine and Mitsubishi are still the best, but your MEO matters less when we're trying to tweak things like ranges, because light airframes don't get as much benefit from percent boosts, where you can see that we got a ton of extra range by slapping Fiat on here. So keep that in mind, that there's no reason you cannot design a heavy fighter with multiple turrets on it, using them to add a little bit of extra air defense and air attack, while also tweaking your weight so that it gets to the amount of thrust you have. You could also use a 3-engine setup and slap on some extra range that way. Slap on maybe some armor plates. Upgrade this to a single heavy machine gun turret. You've got options if you're willing to put 3 engines, but I'm not currently recommending a tri-engine setup in the beta patch right now, because I don't think it's as efficient as a 2-engine setup, but I'm also not done testing. So if you need a heavy fighter, here you go. Nice, easy to use heavy fighter. Slap your MEO on it for range so that you could do stuff in the Pacific or fly really far away. This will do just fine in the beta patch. At least it's going to do fine until Paradox changes it. Again, it's a beta patch. Who knows what they're going to be doing to change things. All right, and that about wraps things up for this first impression video. I hope that you got at least some information out of this. I'm looking forward to seeing what other changes Paradox is going to put into the aircraft system as they fiddle around with it. It seems like they decided that they didn't like some of the changes that they made, made cannons too powerful, too useful, made machine guns basically worthless. But we may be back to a situation where there's no reason to use cannons anymore. But as I do more tests, I'll keep you updated on what I'm seeing. We actually have a sunny but cool day outside today, and I hope things are at least pleasant where you are. And even as I'm failing here to advance in Norway against the Axis powers, I hope that you are having a pleasant day, and I will talk to you all later.